December 7th, 1941, 6 a.m., the Northern Pacific Ocean, 275 miles north of the Hawaiian island of Oahu. A massive, lethal armada glides silently through the dark, freezing, and turbulent waters of the Pacific. It is the Kido Butai, the Imperial Japanese Navy's elite First Air Fleet, the most powerful and concentrated naval striking force the world has ever seen up to this moment in history. 6 heavy aircraft carriers form the heart of this mechanical leviathan. The Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, Shokaku, and Zuikaku. Surrounding them in the pitch-black pre-dawn morning is a formidable screen of 2 fast battleships, 3 cruisers, 9 destroyers, and a fleet of stealthy submarines lurking beneath the crushing waves. On the wooden flight decks of the carriers, the deafening, rhythmic roar of radial engines shatters the ocean's silence. Hundreds of Mitsubishi A6M0 fighters, Aichi D3A Valdive bombers, and Nakajima B5N-K torpedo bombers are warming up their engines. Propeller wash whips across the decks, smelling of high-octane aviation fuel and salt water. Inside the bridge of the flagship Akagi, Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo looks out at the dark horizon. His face is a mask of absolute, unwavering discipline. The radio silence of the fleet has been perfectly maintained for thousands of miles. The element of surprise is absolute. Their target is Pearl Harbor, the heart, the soul, and the anchor of the United States Pacific Fleet. At this exact moment, 200 miles to the south, the Americans are completely asleep. It is a peaceful Sunday morning in paradise. 8 majestic American battleships, including the USS Arizona, Nevada, and Oklahoma, are moored tightly together along Battleship Row. Below decks, thousands of young American sailors are resting in their bunks. Some are preparing for morning chow. Others are writing letters back home to wives, mothers, and sweethearts they will never see again. The radar stations in Hawaii are primitive, experimental, and poorly manned. When a blip appears on the screen at Opana Point, it will be fatally dismissed as a flight of friendly B-17 bombers arriving from the mainland. They suspect absolutely nothing. In less than 2 hours, a devastating, coordinated surprise attack will rain fire and steel upon the harbor. It will drag the United States, kicking and screaming, into the bloodiest, most destructive global conflict in the history of human civilization. Over 2,400 American servicemen and civilians will die in a matter of minutes. Battleships will capsize and burn. The pride of the U.S. Navy will be shattered in the shallow mud of Ford Island. History has already written this tragedy in blood, oil, and tears. It is a day that will live in infamy. But history is not a solid line. Sometimes it is a fragile glass window, and today that window is about to be violently shattered. May 15th, 2024. Present day. High above the Pacific Ocean, a single, ominous black wing slices through the freezing stratosphere at 50,000 feet. It casts no radar signature. It reflects almost no light. It makes absolutely no sound to anyone standing on the earth below. It is a $2 billion masterpiece of modern aerospace engineering, a machine designed not to fight wars, but to end them. The B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, United States Air Force 509th Bomb Wing, call sign Reaper 1. Inside the pressurized, highly classified, and clinically illuminated cockpit, the mission commander and pilot, Major Thomas Vance, monitors a complex array of glowing digital displays. Beside him, the weapons systems officer, Captain Marcus Thorne, is running a routine diagnostic on the aircraft's internal defense suites. They are returning to Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri after a grueling 24-hour classified deterrence patrol over the Pacific Rim. Deep inside the bomber's belly, locked securely within the Advanced Applications rotary launcher, sits a payload capable of extinguishing entire metropolitan cities in the blink of an eye. 2 B-61-12 variable-yield tactical nuclear gravity bombs, the absolute pinnacle of American nuclear deterrence. Control, this is Reaper 1, approaching checkpoint Alpha, altitude 50,000. Systems nominal. Skies are clear, Major Vance says into his noise-cancelling headset, expecting the familiar crisp reply from the satellite relay. But Control never answers. Instead of a voice, a burst of deafening, high-pitched static explodes through their headsets. Before Captain Thorne can reach for the communications panel to troubleshoot, the sky outside the cockpit's reinforced glass violently distorts. The calm, dark blue Pacific morning is instantly swallowed by a blinding, pulsating, violently rotating violet storm. The heavy stealth bomber, weighing over 300,000 pounds, violently shudders and drops in altitude. The advanced quadruple redundant fly-by-wire computer system desperately fights the control surfaces to keep the massive flying wing stable as the very fabric of space and time rips apart around them. Alarms scream inside the cockpit. Master warning lights flash a brilliant, terrifying red. What the hell was that? Thorne gasps, his hands flying across the rebooting digital panels. Major, we've lost GPS. The inertial navigation system is throwing out garbage data. Satellite uplink is completely dead. We are flying completely completely blind. The violet light vanishes as quickly as it appeared, leaving no trace. But the sky outside is no longer bright. It is dark, heavy, and freezing. The sun has retreated below the horizon. The atmosphere outside the glass feels archaic. Wrong. Major Vance grips the center stick, stabilizing the aircraft. His breathing is heavy, but his training takes over. Check the backup systems, Marcus. Give me a celestial navigation fix. I need to know where we are right now. Thorn activates the automated celestial star tracker system, a failsafe designed for when satellites are destroyed in a nuclear war. The computer scans the stars above them and begins to crunch the astronomical data. Major, the active electronically scanned array radar is still functioning, Vance says, his voice turning cold. And it is picking up something absolutely impossible. Vance looks at his tactical display. I have massive surface contacts directly below us, a massive naval fleet, over 30 ships moving in a tight combat formation, but they have zero modern electronic emissions, no digital transponders, no encrypted comms, no modern radar signatures. They are completely dark electromagnetically. Give me visuals, Vance orders, his heart pounding against his ribs. Thorn switches on the high-resolution optical targeting sensors and the advanced forward-looking infrared. The camera zooms in from 50,000 feet, piercing through the pre-dawn darkness and the thin layer of clouds with terrifying modern clarity. On the monochrome high-definition screen, the unmistakable silhouette of a massive aircraft carrier appears, but it has no angled flight deck. It has no steam catapults. It has no nuclear reactor heat signature. It has a giant painted red sun, the Hinomaru, on its wooden deck. Surrounding it are battleships with pagoda-style masts that belong in a history museum. Major, Thorn whispers in absolute paralyzing disbelief. The blood drains from his face. Those are Japanese Imperial carriers. That's the Akagi. I recognize the portside island structure, and the Kaga right behind her. Thorn looks down. At the celestial navigation readout, the computer has finally matched the star alignment to a specific date and time. Major, the stars don't lie. The alignment is perfect. The date is December 7th, 1941. Time is 06:15 local. The silence in the stealth bomber is absolute. Only the quiet, steady hum of the 4 General Electric turbofan engines can be heard. They are flying directly over the Imperial Japanese fleet, exactly 1 hour before. The first wave of bombers launches to attack Pearl Harbor. 2 men from the 21st century hold the fate of World War II and the lives of thousands of Americans in their hands. Let's pause and look at the terrifying, almost comical technological gap between the 2 eras. The Japanese fleet in 1941 is the undisputed master of the Pacific, but their technology is mechanical, analog. Their most advanced early warning radar, if they even have it, turned on, is incredibly primitive. It can barely distinguish a flock of birds from a heavy bomber, let alone detect a stealth aircraft designed to defeat the most advanced Russian surface-to-air missile systems of the 2020s. Their Mitsubishi A6M0 fighters are deadly, agile, and maneuverable in a low-altitude dogfight, but their maximum operational altitude is barely 33,000 feet, and it takes them a long time to climb that high. The B-2 Spirit is currently cruising at 50,000 feet, almost 10 miles above the ocean. It is physically unreachable by any anti-aircraft gun the Japanese possess. It is physically unreachable by any fighter plane in their arsenal. But more importantly, it is invisible. The B-2's radar cross-section is smaller than a pigeon. Its smooth, tailless flying wing design and its classified radar-absorbent coating mean that no radar wave of the 1940s will ever bounce back to a receiver. To the Japanese Empire, the B-2 Spirit does not exist. It is an untouchable, invisible god of death, floating in the freezing stratosphere directly above their heads. The Japanese admirals on the bridge of the Akagi are looking out at the horizon, holding their binoculars, dreaming of a total, crushing victory that will secure their empire for 1,000 years. They are confident. They are proud. They have absolutely no idea that the wrath of the future, a weapon of apocalyptic destruction, is hovering directly above them, deciding their fate. Inside the cockpit, the ethical and temporal dilemma crashes down on the 2 modern pilots. "Major, what are your orders?" Captain Thorn asks, his hand trembling slightly as his finger hovers over the weapons release console. "This is the grandfather paradox. If we drop a payload on this fleet, we change the entire timeline of human history. We alter World War II. We might erase our own timeline. We might erase our own families." Major Vance stares at the optical screen. He looks at the thermal image of the Japanese carriers. He sees the hundreds of bright white spots on the flight deck, the heat signatures of the Zero engines warming warming up. He knows exactly what those planes are about to do. He knows the names of the battleships that are about to become steel tombs in the mud of Pearl Harbor. USS Arizona, USS Oklahoma, USS Utah. He thinks of the 2,403 Americans who are currently sleeping peacefully in Hawaii, entirely unaware that the executioner's axe is about to fall on their necks. Captain Thorne, Major Vance says, his voice suddenly void of any hesitation. It is as cold and hard as the ice outside their windshield. We took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Those ships down there are an enemy force, currently en route to conduct an unprovoked, devastating sneak attack on American soil. Vance looks over at his co-pilot. I don't care about the temporal physics. I don't care about the timeline. I'm an officer of the United States Air Force. We protect our own. And I will not sit up here in the stratosphere and watch 3,000 Americans burn to death when I have the power to stop it. Vance grips the stick. Open the bomb bay doors. Spool up the B-61. Thorne nods. The hesitation vanishes from his eyes. He turns to the weapons control panel. Deep inside the belly of the stealth bomber, hydraulic mechanisms whine. The massive stealth-coated bomb bay doors swing open, exposing the dark interior to the freezing air of 1941. The advanced applications rotary. Launcher rotates with a heavy mechanical clunk, bringing a single sleek silver cylinder into the drop position. The B-61-12. This is not the clumsy, unguided atomic bomb of the 1940s. This is a precision-guided, tactical nuclear weapon. It features a dialer yield capability, allowing the crew to select the exact explosive force required for the mission. Major, requesting yield selection, Thorne says, his fingers dancing across the encrypted arming keypad. Set yield to 50 kilotons, Vance orders. 50 kilotons, more than double the destructive power of the Fat Man bomb that would eventually fall on Nagasaki years later. It is a terrifying amount of energy, but it is calculated. It is small enough that the resulting radioactive fallout and the atmospheric shockwave will not reach the Hawaiian Islands, 275 miles away. The blast will be contained to the open ocean and the fleet. Yield set to 50 kilotons. PAL codes authorized. Master arm is on, Thorne confirms. The red lights on his console turn to a solid, lethal green. Target locked. Dead center of the Kido Butai fleet formation, right between the Akagi and the Kaga. Vance takes a deep breath. He looks at the crosshairs on the optical screen, resting perfectly over the wooden deck of the flagship. Drop it. Captain Thorne presses the release button. The B-2 Spirit shudders slightly as it releases the 1,200-pound weapon. The single, sleek silver cylinder drops from the rotary launcher, tumbling into the freezing night air. The bomb bay doors immediately snap shut, sealing the bomber's stealth profile once again. The B-61-12 freefalls from 50,000 feet. As it hits the denser air, its tail fins deploy. Guided by its internal inertial navigation system and the spin-stabilized tail kit, it plummets toward the ocean with absolute terrifying mathematical perfection. It does not deviate a single inch from its programmed trajectory. It takes approximately 1 minute for the bomb to fall 10 miles, 60 seconds of silence. On the deck of the Japanese carrier Akagi, a young aviation mechanic looks up at the dark sky, pausing from his work on a torpedo bomber. He feels a strange shift in the air pressure. He doesn't see a plane. There is no roar of engines. He only hears a strange, high-pitched metallic whistling sound tearing through the cloud layer directly above him, a sound that does not belong in 1941. He doesn't even have time to open his mouth to scream. He doesn't even have time to blink. The tactical nuclear bomb reaches its detonation altitude, exactly 1,000 feet above the dark, rolling waves of the Pacific Ocean, directly in the geographical center of the Japanese fleet. The radar altimeter triggers the firing mechanism. Conventional high explosives inside the bomb casing detonate, driving a subcritical mass of plutonium into a supercritical state. Neutrons flood the core. A runaway nuclear chain reaction occurs in less than a millionth of a second. A flash of light, 1,000,000 times brighter than the sun, erupts over the Pacific Ocean. It is a light so intense, so pure and so blinding that it instantly burns the retinas of any Japanese sailor looking in its general direction, miles away on the escort destroyers. The heat is absolute and instantaneous. In a fraction of a microsecond, the temperature at the center of the detonation reaches tens of millions of degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than the core of the sun itself. The ocean directly beneath the blast does not boil. It instantly flashes into superheated plasma and steam. The 6 aircraft carriers of the Kido Butai, the pride, the joy, and the unstoppable fist of the Imperial Japanese Navy, do not sink. They simply cease to exist. The intense thermal radiation vaporizes the wooden flight decks, the airplanes, the aviation fuel, and the crewmen in less time than it takes a human neuron to process pain. The massive, thousands of tons steel hulls of the carriers and battleships literally melt and warp like soft wax, immediately before being hit by the kinetic force of the blast. The shockwave, a solid invisible wall of compressed air moving at supersonic speeds, carrying millions of pounds of pressure per square inch. edge. It slams into the surrounding cruisers and destroyers, crushing their armored hulls inward like empty soda cans. The ships are picked up by the sheer force of the blast and tossed through the air like discarded toys, breaking apart into a million flaming pieces of shrapnel. The blast wave hits the surface of the ocean, displacing millions of tons of water in a split second. A colossal, roaring base surge of boiling water, steam, and irradiated foam expands outward in a perfect circle at the speed of sound, swallowing everything in its path. And then, the iconic, terrifying signature of the atomic age rises from the sea. A colossal pillar of fire, smoke, and boiling water shoots miles into the upper atmosphere, forming a terrifying glowing mushroom cloud that dwarfs the clouds around it. The fireball paints the pre-dawn night sky in apocalyptic hues of bloody red, toxic purple, and blinding orange. In less than 3 seconds, the entire striking force of the Japanese Empire, the fleet that was supposed to conquer the Pacific, is entirely erased from existence, completely annihilated, leaving behind nothing but a boiling radioactive crater in the ocean and a cloud of ash rising to the heavens. 275 miles away, on the peaceful beaches of Oahu, Hawaii, the sun is just beginning to rise. American sailors on the morning watch, drinking their coffee on the decks of the battleships in Pearl Harbor, suddenly drop their mugs. They run to the railings. They look out at the northern horizon in absolute paralyzing awe. A second, unnatural sun has risen over the ocean, a brilliant, terrifying flash of light that briefly turned the shadows in Hawaii in the wrong direction. Following the flash, a massive, glowing red cloud slowly begins to rise above the curvature of the earth, painting the peaceful Hawaiian sky in terrifying colors. The shockwave does not reach them, but the low, rumbling, tectonic vibration shakes the glass in the windows of the command buildings. Admiral Husband E. Kimmel, Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet, runs out of his quarters in his pajamas, staring at the apocalyptic horizon. He doesn't know what it is. The scientists in Los Alamos haven't even successfully tested the first atomic bomb yet. The Manhattan Project is barely in its infancy. They don't know what they are looking at, but they know, deep in their bones, that the world has just fundamentally changed, and they know they are safe. The devastating attack on Pearl Harbor never happens. Not a single bomb falls on American soil. Not a single American sailor dies in the mud of Ford Island. The Pacific Fleet remains completely, 100% intact. High above the nuclear storm, cruising safely at 50,000 feet, the B-2 Spirit silently banks away, completely untouched by the blast or the electromagnetic pulse, its systems hardened against nuclear. Environments. Major Vance and Captain Thorne look back at the glowing mushroom cloud illuminating the dark ocean. They say nothing. There are no words for what they have just done. Suddenly, the air in front of the bomber warps once again. The violet storm violently rips the sky open. The temporal rift reopens, hungrily pulling the black stealth wing back into the 21st century, leaving the 1940s behind forever. History is violently, radically rewritten. The United States enters World War II completely intact. Without the devastating loss of its Pacific Fleet, without the psychological trauma of Pearl Harbor, the American military machine mobilizes with terrifying, unhindered efficiency. In Tokyo, the Japanese High Command descends into absolute panic and chaos. They lose contact with their entire invincible fleet in a single moment. When scout planes finally reach the coordinates, days later, they find nothing but irradiated water and floating melted debris. Believing the Americans possess a literal weapon of the gods, the Japanese Empire's morale is completely shattered. They sue for peace months later, terrified of facing the wrath of a nation that can vaporize oceans. The Pacific War is effectively ended before a single American ship is scratched. The United States focuses its entire, undivided military and industrial might on Nazi Germany. The war in Europe ends years ahead of schedule. Millions of lives, soldiers and civilians alike, are saved from the meat grinder of the 1940s, and official history records the event of December 7th, 1941, not as a day of infamy, but as the day of the divine fire, an unexplained, apocalyptic, miraculous explosion that swallowed the enemies of democracy whole, a mystery that baffled scientists and historians for decades. But, deep within the most highly classified top-secret Pentagon files in the year 2024, files locked away in vaults that do not officially exist, a different story is told. The true story, the story of a single black wingless bomber that flew back through the fabric of time and delivered the ultimate devastating American revenge. Welcome to the tactical time rift. What past battle would you end with the overwhelming power of modern technology? What empire would you crush? Drop your targets in the comments below. Subscribe now and prepare for the next rift to open.